My son demanded that I sell my coffee shop to fund his business. I refused. He cut off all relations with me. 15 years later, a homeless young man showed up at the shop looking for a job. He had familiar eyes that immediately intrigued me. "Who is your mother, and where do you live?" I asked him, feeling something in my chest tighten. His answer revealed my son's dark secret, a secret that had been buried for 15 years, a secret that would change everything. But let me tell you from the beginning, because this story started long before that boy walked through the door of my coffee shop. I was 49 years old when I became a widow. My husband, George, died of a sudden heart attack one Sunday morning while we were having coffee in this very coffee shop that he had built with his own hands. I was devastated. The world lost its colour. But I was also left with this little gem. A modest but stable business, with loyal customers and enough income to live decently. It was everything I had. It was George's legacy. It was my reason to get up every morning. Robert was 20 years old then. He was my only son, the centre of my universe, the reason I kept going after losing my husband. Smart, handsome, charismatic. Everyone said he would go far, and I believed him. I believed everything. He was my boy, my pride, my hope. 6 months after the funeral, Robert came home one night with a proposal, or rather, with a demand. He walked into the coffee shop just before closing, when I was cleaning the tables. He sat down across from me with that confident smile he always wore when he wanted something. "Mum, I found an incredible opportunity," he said, pulling some papers out of his backpack. "A tech company that is looking for investors. It's the future. In 2 years, we triple the investment. In 5, we'll be millionaires." I listened to him explain numbers, projections, and brilliant promises. Everything sounded marvelous until he said the number. "I only need $100,000 to get in." $100,000? It was exactly the value of the coffee shop. He knew it. I knew it. The silence between us became heavy. I finally understood where all this was going. "You want me to sell the coffee shop?" I said, feeling my throat close up. "It's just a business, Mum. We can get something better later. This is an investment in our future." Our future? As if he were going to share it with me. As if he wasn't asking me to sacrifice everything I had left of George, all my livelihood, all my security, for a dream that wasn't even mine. I told him no. I explained that the coffee shop was all I had, that it was my way of honouring his father, that at 49 years old I couldn't risk my future on an uncertain gamble. I told him I loved him, that I wanted to see him succeed, but that I couldn't do this. He insisted. Once, twice, 3 times. Every conversation grew tenser. Every rejection from me made him angrier. I stood firm, even though every no tore me up inside. Then his face changed. The last night he came, there was no longer any tenderness in his eyes. There was only coldness, something hard and cruel that I had never seen in my son before. "You're selfish," he told me, the words dropping like stones. "Dad would be disappointed in you. You prefer your mediocre little coffee shop over your son's future, over my happiness." I felt as if he had slapped me. Tears rolled down my cheeks, and I couldn't stop them. I begged him to understand. I told him I loved him more than anything in the world, but that I couldn't do what he asked. "Then we have nothing more to talk about," he replied, standing up. A week later, he came back. This time, he wasn't alone. He had a woman on his arm, a woman I knew very well. Isabel. I had hired her as a waitress 3 months earlier. She was young, maybe 23 or 24, with that striking beauty that makes men lose their minds. Long, dark hair, green eyes, a smile that promised dangerous things. But she was also trouble. She was constantly late. She treated customers badly. And I finally discovered she was stealing from the tip money. I fired her immediately. Now she was there, hanging on my son's arm, wearing a dress that was too tight, looking at me with a triumphant smile that chilled my blood. "Isabel and I are together," Robert announced, as if he were introducing me to a princess. "We're leaving the city. We're going to build our future away from here, away from you." The world tilted under my feet. I felt nauseous. Was this revenge? Was he using that woman, that thief, just to hurt me? "Robert, please," I whispered. "She's not a good person. She stole from this coffee shop. You can't trust—" "I'm not going to listen to this," he interrupted, raising his hand. "You never supported me. You never believed in me. Isabel does believe. She does love me." Isabel laughed, a soft, venomous laugh. "Goodbye, Vera," she said, using my name as if we were friends. "Thanks for everything." They left that same night. Robert never called again. He never wrote, no birthdays, no Christmases, not a single word in 15 years. He disappeared from my life as if I had never existed. As if the 20 years I spent raising him, loving him, sacrificing for him, meant nothing. The first few months were hell. I cried every night. I woke up waiting for a call that never came. I checked my phone 100 times a day. Nothing. Absolute silence. Little by little, I learned to live with the emptiness. The coffee shop became my refuge. My customers became my family. Martha, a sweet woman who came every morning for her latte, became my confidant. She knew the whole story. She held me up when I thought I couldn't go on. The years passed. 49 turned into 50, then 60. Now I was 64 years old. My hair was completely grey. My hands trembled a little in the mornings. My back hurt after a long day. But I was still here. I was still standing. I was still serving coffee and smiling at customers, even though I was still broken inside. And then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, the door of the coffee shop opened. A boy walked in. Young, maybe 19 years old. He was soaked, his clothes dirty and torn, his hair too long, covering part of his face. His shoes were destroyed, showing his toes. He carried an old backpack on his back. He stood by the door, as if he didn't know if he had the right to be there. Then he looked at me, and I felt my heart stop. Those eyes. My God, those eyes. They were Robert's eyes. Exactly the same. The same dark brown color. The same shape. Even the same way of looking. Somewhere between timid and desperate. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said in a hoarse voice. "Do you need help in the kitchen? Or cleaning? I can do anything. I don't need you to pay me much. I'll work for food." I was paralyzed. I couldn't stop looking at him. He looked down, embarrassed, probably thinking I was judging him for his appearance. Something in my chest tightened. Something compelled me to speak. "What's your name?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Who is your mother?" He looked up, surprised by the question. "My name is Oscar, ma'am," he replied. "My mother's name is Isabel." The world stopped turning. Isabel. That name. That damned name I had tried to forget for 15 years. "Where do you live, Oscar?" I asked, though my voice was trembling. He looked down again. "On the street, ma'am. Wherever I can." And in that moment, I knew my life was about to change forever. I gave him the job right then and there. I didn't think twice. Something inside me screamed that I couldn't let him go. That there was a reason this boy had appeared in my coffee shop after 15 years of silence. a reason I couldn't fully comprehend yet, but that I felt in every fibre of my being. "You can start tomorrow," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "At 0 hour 6 minutes. I'll pay you $50 a day, plus food. Does that sound fair?" Oscar's eyes lit up as if I had offered him the whole world. They filled with tears, but he held them back by blinking quickly. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you. I won't disappoint you. I promise." Before he could leave, I stopped him. "Wait, have you eaten today?" He hesitated. Then he shook his head, embarrassed. "Sit down," I ordered, pointing to a table by the window. "I'm going to make you something." I made him a large chicken and cheese sandwich, served him hot soup, gave him a generous slice of chocolate cake that was left over from the day before, and filled a large cup of latte for him. I watched from behind the counter as he devoured everything in minutes, like a hungry animal who didn't know when he would eat again. When he finished, he looked up at me with those eyes that reminded me so much of my son, and he smiled. A timid but genuine smile. A smile Robert had never given me, even as a child. "That's the best meal I've had in months, Mom," he said. "Thank you very much." "Call me Ms. Vera," I replied, feeling something loosen in my chest. "Everyone calls me that." I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed awake in my small apartment above the coffee shop, turning everything over. Isabel, Oscar, Robert's eyes, the dates. The boy had said he was 19 years old when I asked his age before he left. 19 years. Robert had left 15 years ago with Isabel. The numbers could add up perfectly. Could it be possible? Could Oscar be Robert's son? My grandson? The idea took my breath away. It filled me with hope and terror at the same time. What if it was true? What if Robert had a son and never told me? What if that child had grown up in poverty, on the streets, without knowing he had a grandmother who would have loved him with all her heart? But it could also be a coincidence. Isabel is a common name. Maybe it wasn't the same woman. Maybe I was seeing what I wanted to see, because I had been alone for 15 years, longing for my son, dreaming of some kind of redemption or second chance. The next morning, Oscar arrived 5 minutes before 0 hour 6 minutes. He was wearing the same clothes as the day before, but he had washed his face and combed his hair as best he could. He greeted me with a nervous smile. "Good morning, Ms. Vera. I'm ready to work." I showed him the basic tasks: cleaning the tables, sweeping the floor, washing dishes, helping in the kitchen when necessary. He absorbed every instruction like a sponge. He worked quickly with a dedication that surprised me. He didn't complain. He didn't ask for breaks. He simply did what was asked of him with a silent gratitude that broke my heart. During lunch, I prepared him a large plate of food, and we sat together at a back table. I needed to know more. I needed to confirm or rule out my suspicions. "Tell me about yourself, Oscar," I said casually, although my heart was pounding. "How long have you been living on the street?" He looked down at his plate. "About 6 months," he replied in a low voice. "Since my mum. Since she left." "She left? Where to?" "I don't know. One night she just didn't come back home. Well, it wasn't really a home. It was a room we rented in an old building. When I couldn't pay the rent, they kicked me out." I felt a pang of pain in my chest. "And your father? Can't he help you?" Oscar let out a bitter laugh. "I don't have a father. I never did. My mom always said he abandoned us before I was born, that when he found out she was pregnant, he disappeared. He never wanted to know anything about me." The words dropped like bombs. Every single one confirmed my worst fears. It had to be Robert. The timing fit. The story fit. Everything fit perfectly. Did your mum never tell you his name? I asked, trying not to sound too anxious. No. She refused to talk about him. She said it was better that way, that men like him didn't deserve to be remembered. He paused. But I always wanted to know. I always wondered what it would be like to have a father, or a real family. I had to bite my lip to keep from crying right there. This boy, this beautiful child who worked so hard and spoke with such humility, was my grandson. I was almost certain. And he had grown up with nothing, without a father, without a family, without knowing he had a grandmother who would have loved him from the first second. And you, Miss Vera? Oscar asked suddenly, pulling me out of my thoughts. You have family. The question took me by surprise. I swallowed. I had a son, I said slowly. But we became estranged many years ago. We don't talk anymore. I'm so sorry, he said with genuine sincerity. That must be very difficult. It is, I admitted. Every day. We stayed silent for a moment. Then Oscar spoke again. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Ms. Vera. You didn't know me at all, and still you trusted me. Not many people do that. Everyone deserves a chance, I replied, putting my hand over his. Especially good people. And I can see that you are a good person, Oscar. He smiled, that timid smile that I was already starting to cherish as if it were my own. Days turned into weeks. Oscar worked tirelessly. He arrived early and left late. He learned to make coffee, prepare sandwiches, and deal with customers. He had a natural gift for it. He was kind, polite, attentive. Regular customers began asking for him by name. One afternoon, Martha pulled me aside after Oscar went to clean the back tables. That boy, she said in a low voice. Who is he, really? What do you mean? I asked, pretending not to understand. Vera, I have eyes. That boy has your smile. And he has the eyes of… She stopped. He has Robert's eyes. I froze. I couldn't lie to Martha. She knew me too well. I suspect it, I finally admitted. I think he's my grandson. Martha put her hand to her mouth. Are you sure? Not completely, but everything fits. The age, the mother's name, the story. I need to be sure before I tell him anything. I can't give him hope and then snatch it away. So what are you going to do? I'm going to find out, I said with determination. Any way necessary. That same night, after Oscar left, I stayed in the coffee shop going over everything. I needed proof. I needed certainty. Then I remembered something. Oscar sometimes left his backpack in the small back storage room he used as a changing area. If I could find something in there. A photo. A document. Anything. I know it was wrong. I know I invaded his privacy, but I needed to know. I went into the storage room, my heart pounding loudly. The backpack was there, leaning against the wall. With trembling hands, I opened it. There was very little inside. Old clothes, a frayed towel, a toothbrush. And at the very bottom, wrapped in a plastic bag, I found an old, worn photograph. I carefully took it out and looked at it under the light. It was Isabel. Younger, but definitely her. She was smiling, wrapped around a man who was facing away. I could only see part of his dark hair and his broad back. But I recognized the shirt. It was the red shirt I had given Robert for his 20th birthday. I turned the photo over. There was a date written in faded blue ink. 15 years ago. My legs gave out. I sat down on the floor of the storage room holding that photograph, and I cried. I cried for all the lost years, for the grandson I never knew, for the son who had abandoned me. for all the pain that could have been avoided. Oscar was my grandson. There was no doubt. I put the photograph back exactly as I had found it and zipped up the backpack. I left the storage room with trembling legs and a broken heart. I sat at one of the coffee shop tables, in the darkness, trying to process what I had just confirmed. Oscar was my grandson, my blood, Robert's son, and he had grown up with nothing, without a father, without a family, sleeping on the streets like an abandoned dog. While Robert, what had Robert been doing all these years? Did he even know he had a son? Or had he abandoned Isabel just like he had abandoned me? Rage burned inside me, but I also felt an overwhelming tenderness. I had a grandson, a wonderful, hard-working, kind-hearted grandson. And now that I knew, what would I do? Would I tell him? How would he react? Would he hate me for being the grandmother of the man who abandoned him? Or would he find in me the family he had always wanted? I decided to wait. I needed to be completely sure. I needed definitive proof. The next day, when Oscar arrived for work, I waited until he went to the restroom. I quickly took a glass he had used and put it in a bag. In the afternoon, I pulled a hair from my own brush. I took them to a private lab downtown. I need a DNA test, I told the receptionist, to confirm if we are family. She looked at me with professional compassion. The results will be ready in 5 business days, ma'am. Those 5 days were torture. I kept treating Oscar normally, but every time I looked at him, I saw Robert. I saw my grandson. I saw everything I had lost and everything I could recover. Oscar was still sleeping on the street. That killed me. One night after closing, I called him over before he left. "Oscar, I want to propose something to you," I said. "There is a small storage room in the back of the coffee shop. It has enough space for a mattress. It's not much, but it's better than the street. You can stay there if you want." He looked at me with wide eyes. "Really, Ms. Vera, I don't want to take advantage of your kindness." "It's not taking advantage. It's common sense. I need you to arrive on time every morning, and you can't do that if you're sleeping in a park who knows how many miles from here." It was a half-truth. The truth was, I couldn't stand the idea of my grandson sleeping on the street for one more night. "I don't know how to thank you," he said, his voice breaking. "By working hard. That's all the gratitude I need." That same night, I helped him set up an old but clean mattress in the storage room. I gave him sheets, a pillow, a small lamp. It wasn't much, but when I saw his face light up with happiness, I knew it was everything to him. "I haven't had a bed in years," he confessed to me, touching the sheets as if they were silk. "Thank you, Ms. Vera. You are the kindest person I have ever met." I had to turn away so he wouldn't see me cry. The days passed, and my bond with Oscar grew stronger. We started having breakfast together every morning before opening the coffee shop. He told me stories of his difficult childhood. I told him stories of my husband George and how we had built the coffee shop from scratch. I never mentioned Robert. Not yet. Not until I had the proof in my hand. One morning, while I was preparing pancakes, Oscar asked me a question that took my breath away. "Ms. Vera, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course, son," I replied, and the word son came out of my mouth without thinking. "Your son, the one you said you became estranged from. What happened? Why did you stop talking?" I stood still in front of the stove. I felt my throat close up. "He wanted something I couldn't give him," I finally said. "He wanted me to sell this coffee shop to fund his dreams. I refused. For him, that was unforgivable. And I never saw him again. Never again." Oscar was silent for a moment. Then he said something that broke my heart. "I think you did the right thing, Ms. Vera. This coffee shop is your life, your legacy. Nobody should ask you to sacrifice that. And if he couldn't understand it, then he stopped. Then he lost something very valuable. He lost a wonderful mother. I had to turn around completely so he wouldn't see me cry. This boy, this sweet child who had suffered so much, was defending me. He was giving me the love and respect my own son had denied me. "Thank you," I whispered. "That means a lot to me." On the 5th day, I received the call from the lab. The results were ready. I closed the coffee shop early, making up an excuse about a doctor's appointment, and rushed to the lab. The woman handed me a manila envelope. "Would you like me to explain the results?" she asked. "Yes, please." She opened the envelope and pulled out the papers. She looked them over for a moment. Then she looked up at me with a soft smile. "According to the DNA tests, there is a probability of 99.9% that you share a grandmother-grandson bond. There is no doubt, ma'am. He is your grandson." The world stopped. Even though I already knew it in my heart, hearing it out loud, seeing it written on paper with an official seal, made everything real. Absolutely real. "Thank you," I managed to say, taking the papers with trembling hands. I walked out of the lab as if in a dream. I had a grandson. Oscar was my grandson. My family, my blood. And now I had to tell him, but how? When? And what would happen next? That night, when I returned to the coffee shop, Oscar had already finished cleaning everything. He was waiting for me with a smile, eager to tell me that he had managed to memorize all the recipes for the special sandwiches. "Ms. Vera, are you okay?" he asked, noticing my expression. "You look pale." "I'm fine, son," I said, and this time the word son carried all the weight of the world. "I'm just tired, it's been a long day. Would you like me to make you some tea? I learned to make it just how you like it." "That would be perfect." We sat together in the empty coffee shop, drinking tea, talking about trivial things. But my mind kept spinning. I had to tell him. He deserved to know the truth. He deserved to know he had family, that I was his grandmother, that he would never be alone again. But I was also scared. What if he got angry? What if he blamed me for not looking for him sooner? What if he hated Robert so much that he didn't want anything to do with me? "Oscar," I began, feeling my pulse quicken. "There's something I need to ask you." "Of course, Miss Vera. Anything." "Your mother, Isabel, what was she like?" He looked down at his teacup. "She was complicated," he said slowly. "When I was little, she was affectionate. She told me stories. She made me laugh. But then she started drinking, more and more. She became different, angry, sad. She always said that life had betrayed her, that the man she loved had left her pregnant and abandoned her. I don't think she ever got over it. She worked, sometimes, temporary jobs, waitressing, mostly. But she never lasted long anywhere. There were always problems." He shrugged. "We moved a lot. Different cities, different rented rooms. I learned not to get attached to any place because I knew we wouldn't last there." "And did she never mention your father's family? His parents? To you? Your paternal grandmother?" Oscar looked up, surprised by the specific question. "No. Why do you ask?" I took a deep breath. It was now or never. "Because I need to tell you something, Oscar. Something important." He looked at me with those dark brown eyes, so much like Robert's, waiting. But before I could say another word, the coffee shop door opened with a loud bang. And there, standing in the doorway after 15 years of silence, was my son, Robert. His hair was shorter, some grey at his temples. He was wearing an expensive suit. He looked successful, prosperous, as if life had treated him very well. He looked at both of us, first at me, then at Oscar. His eyes lingered on the boy for a long moment. I saw his expression change. First confusion, then recognition, then something like panic. "Mom," he finally said, his voice tense. "We need to talk." The silence that followed was deafening. Oscar looked at me, confused. Then he looked at Robert, trying to understand what was happening. I was paralyzed, the teacup trembling in my hands. 15 years, 15 years of absolute silence. And now he showed up like this, without warning, just as I was about to reveal the truth to Oscar. "Robert," I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. He took a step inside the coffee shop, closing the door behind him. His gaze was still fixed on Oscar, studying him with an intensity that chilled my blood. I could see the wheels turning in his head. He was doing the math. He was recognizing the features. He was understanding. "Who is he?" Robert asked, although from his tone I knew he already knew. Oscar slowly stood up, cautiously, like an animal sensing danger. "I'm Oscar," he said. "I work here. And you?" "My son," I replied before Robert could speak. "He is my son, Robert." I saw Oscar's eyes widen in surprise. He looked at Robert with new attention, searching for similarities, trying to understand why this man dressed in an expensive suit had appeared after 15 years. "Do you need privacy?" Oscar asked politely. "Can I go to the storage room?" "No," I said firmly, taking his arm. "You stay. This involves you, too." Robert clenched his jaw. "Mum, do we really need to talk alone?" "No. After 15 years, I think you lost the right to demand anything. If you have something to say, you say it now, in front of both of us." Robert looked at me with a mixture of frustration and something else. Shame? Fear? I couldn't be sure. He took a deep breath and ran a hand through his hair, a gesture he had made since he was a child when he was nervous. "Fine," he finally said. "Have it your way." He looked directly at Oscar. "How old are you?" 19, Oscar replied, confused. "Why?" "And your mother? What is your mother's name?" Oscar's expression changed. Something on his face hardened, as if he suddenly understood where this was going. "Isabel," he said slowly. "My mother's name is Isabel." Robert closed his eyes. He let out a long, shaky sigh. When he opened them again, there was something in them I hadn't seen before. Pain? Regret? "I knew it," he murmured. "When I saw you sitting there, I knew it immediately. You have her nose, her eyes. You are my son." The world seemed to tilt. Oscar took a step back, as if the words had hit him physically. He looked at me, searching for confirmation, denial, anything that would make sense of what he had just heard. "What?" he whispered. "What is he saying?" "It's true, Oscar," I said softly, although I felt like my heart was going to jump out of my chest. "I just confirmed it with a DNA test. You are my grandson. Robert is your father." Oscar stood motionless. I watched as he processed the information, as his face went through a dozen different emotions. Shock, disbelief, hope. And then, slowly, something darker. Rage. "No," he said, his voice trembling. "Not my father. My father abandoned me. My father left us when my mum was pregnant. My father never wanted to know anything about me. You can't be." He turned toward Robert with clenched fists. You are not my father. A father doesn't abandon his child. A father doesn't leave his family living in misery. I didn't know, Robert said quickly, raising his hands. You have to believe me. Isabel never told me she was pregnant. She never told me you existed. Lie, Oscar screamed, and it was the first time I had seen him lose control. My mom always said she begged you to stay, that she told you she was pregnant and you gave her money to get an abortion. Robert turned pale. I didn't. Things weren't like that. Then how were they? I demanded, feeling my own rage awaken. What did you do to that woman, Robert? What did you do to your son? He slumped into a chair, burying his face in his hands. For a long moment, he said nothing. He just breathed heavily, as if he were struggling with himself. Finally, he spoke, his voice muffled. When I left here, Isabel and I went to another city. I lived with her for a few months. But things went bad. She drank a lot. We fought constantly. I was trying to start businesses, to do something with my life, and she was just self-destructing. He looked up. One night I came home late and found her drunk, crying, saying she was pregnant. She told me it was mine. But I didn't believe her. What? I whispered, horrified. She'd been seeing other men. I knew it. We fought about it all the time. So when she told me she was pregnant, I thought she was trying to trap me, to force me to stay. He ran his hands over his face. I gave her $5,000. I told her to do whatever she wanted with the pregnancy, but that I was leaving, that I didn't want to know anything else about her. My God, I murmured, feeling nauseous. Robert, how could you? I was 21 years old, he exploded. I was an idiot. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought she was lying. I thought the baby wasn't mine. I thought that… He stopped, looking at Oscar with tear-filled eyes. I thought I was making the right decision. But I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. Oscar was trembling. Tears streamed down his cheeks, but he made no move to wipe them away. My mum was right, he said with a broken voice. You abandoned us. You left us with nothing. Do you know how I grew up? Do you know what it was like to live without a father, watching my mum destroy herself every day because the man she loved had left her? Do you know how many nights I went hungry? How many times I slept on the street because we couldn't afford the rent? I'm sorry, Robert said, standing up. I know it's not enough. I know it will never be enough. But I'm sorry. If I had known you were really my son, if I had known you were suffering, What? Oscar interrupted him. Would you have come to rescue me? Would you have been a father? Don't make me laugh. You abandoned your own mother for money. Why would you be any different with me? Robert turned to me, and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen in 15 years. Genuine shame. Mom, I came because I needed to see you. I needed to apologize. All this time I've been thinking about what I said to you, about how I treated you. I built my business. I made money. I have a big house, an expensive car, everything I dreamed of having. But I'm not happy. None of it makes me happy because I know what I lost. I know what I did to you. He took a step toward me. And now I discover I have a son who has suffered because of me, a son I should have known, I should have raised, I should have loved. It's too late, I said coldly. 15 years too late. I know, but I came to try to fix things, to get to know you again, to… He looked at Oscar. To get to know you too, if you give me a chance. Oscar wiped his tears with the back of his hand. I don't need your money, he said. I don't need your apologies. I already have family. Miss Vera is more family to me than you will ever be." His words pierced my heart. I walked over to him and hugged him. He clung to me like a frightened child, sobbing on my shoulder. I was crying too, but my tears were different. They were tears of love, of protection, of a silent promise that I would never leave him alone. "It's okay," I whispered to him. "You're safe. I have you. That's all that matters." When Oscar finally pulled away from me, he looked at Robert with red but determined eyes. "I want you to leave," he said. "I don't know you. I don't want to know you. You're 19 years too late." Robert turned pale. "Please, give me a chance. Just one." "No," Oscar shouted. "You don't deserve chances. I lived on the streets. My mom destroyed herself because of you, and now you show up in your expensive suit with your empty apologies, expecting me to hug you, to call you dad. I just want to get to know you. I want to make up for all the lost time." "Time is not made up for. Time is lived, and you weren't there." Robert looked at me, desperate, seeking my intervention, but I said nothing. Oscar was right. Every word he said was true. Robert stood there, in the middle of the coffee shop, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. The successful man, the prosperous businessman, reduced to an absent father seeking redemption where he didn't deserve it. "I understand your rage," he finally said, his voice barely audible. "You have every right to hate me, but I am your father, Oscar. That doesn't change, even if I was the worst father in the world." "Being a father is more than biology," I replied, my voice firm. "Being a father is being present. It's sacrificing. It's loving unconditionally. You did none of that." Robert looked at me with eyes full of pain. "I know, Mom. I know. And I'll live with that for the rest of my life. But at least let me try. Let me be a part of your lives now. I know I can't get back what's lost, but I can be here from now on." "Like you were here for me for those 15 years?" I asked bitterly. "How did you call me on my birthdays? How did you come to visit me when I was sick 3 years ago with pneumonia and almost died alone in the hospital?" He bowed his head. "I didn't know you were sick." "Why did you never ask? Why did you disappear as if I didn't exist? And now you come here expecting what? Instant forgiveness? A happy family?" "I don't expect that. I just hope for a chance to prove I've changed." Oscar wiped away the last of his tears and straightened up. There was something different about him now, a strength I hadn't seen before. "I want you to leave," he repeated, this time more calmly, but with the same determination. "I'm not ready for this. Maybe I never will be. But right now, I need you to leave." Robert nodded slowly. He took a business card from his wallet and left it on the nearest table. "This is my number, my address, my email. If you ever change your mind, if you ever want to talk, I'll be there. I promise." He looked toward me. "For both of you. For you too, Mum." I didn't answer. I simply watched him as he walked toward the door. Before going out, he stopped and turned one last time. "Oscar," he said softly, "I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry for all the pain I caused. And even if you don't believe me now, I want you to know that I care about you, that you are my son, and that means something to me, even if I was late in realizing it." Oscar didn't answer. He simply looked at him with those eyes that were so much like his own, expressionless, giving nothing. Robert finally left, closing the door softly behind him. The silence that remained was different from before. This was a silence of processing, of shock, of everything changing in a matter of minutes. I sat down heavily in a chair, feeling the weight of the revelation crushing me. Oscar remained standing, looking at the door where Robert had disappeared. Then he looked at the business card on the table as if it were a poisonous snake. "Is it true?" he finally asked, his voice small and broken. "Am I really your grandson?" I took the lab results from my purse and handed them to him. He read them slowly, his hands trembling. When he finished, he let the papers fall onto the table. "All this time," he murmured. "All this time I had family, and I didn't know it. I'm sorry, Oscar. I'm sorry I didn't know about you. I'm sorry Robert was such a coward. I'm sorry for all the suffering you went through." He shook his head. "You don't have to apologize for anything, Miss Vera. You didn't know. It wasn't your fault." He paused. He did. He knew it. Maybe he wasn't sure, but he knew it, and he chose not to find out. He chose not to care. "I know, son, and you have every right to be furious, to hate him." Oscar finally sat down, his legs giving way as if they could no longer support him. He covered his face with his hands. "I don't know what to feel," he admitted. "My whole life I dreamed of meeting my father, of having family, and now that he's here, now that I have answers, I only feel emptiness, as if it's too late for it to matter." I moved toward him and put my hand on his shoulder. "It's not too late for us," I said softly. "You are my grandson, Oscar, my blood, my family, and I'm going to be here for you from now on. If you want me to, of course." He looked up, his eyes red and swollen. "Do you really want that? Even though I'm the son of the man who abandoned you?" "You are that man's son, yes, but you are not him. You are everything he was not. You are hard-working, humble, kind-hearted, grateful. You are everything a grandson should be. And I love you, Oscar. From the moment you walked through that door, something in my heart knew you were special. Now I know why." Oscar started crying again, but this time they were different tears. He lunged toward me and hugged me tightly, as if he was afraid I would disappear. "Thank you, Grandma. Thank you for giving me a chance. Thank you for being my family. I promise I always will," I whispered, stroking his hair. "You will always be my family." We stayed like that for a long time, grandmother and grandson, finding each other after years of being lost from one another. When we finally separated, there was something new between us, a deeper bond, a certainty. "What do we do now?" Oscar asked, wiping his tears. "Now," I said, taking his hand. "Now we live. We build what we should have always had, a family." The following days were strange, but beautiful. Oscar started calling me Grandma instead of Miss Vera. At first he did it timidly, as if he didn't have the right. But every time he said it, I felt my heart fill with a joy I hadn't felt in 15 years. Martha cried when I told her the whole story. She hugged Oscar as if he were her own grandson, and told him that now he had not only a grandmother, but a whole family of coffee shop customers who loved him. I started teaching him more about the business, not just the basic tasks, but the management, the finances, the secrets of George's recipes. Oscar absorbed everything with hunger, not for food this time, but for knowledge, for purpose, for the future. One night, as we were closing the coffee shop together, he asked me a question that left me breathless. "Grandma, do you think my mum is still alive?" I stopped, the cleaning rag in my hand. "I don't know, son. What do you think?" He shrugged. "Part of me wants to find her, wants to know if she's okay. But another part—" He stopped. "Another part is afraid of what I'll find. that she's dead, or worse, that she's alive and doesn't care to see me. I understand that fear, but if you want to look for her, I'll help you. And if you don't want to, that's okay too. You don't have to make that decision now. Thank you, Grandma. He smiled slightly. I like the way that sounds, Grandma. I like it too, grandson. Me too. Weeks passed. Oscar flourished under my care. He gained weight. His skin regained its color. He bought new clothes with his salary. He started to be what he should have always been, a 19-year-old young man with his whole life ahead of him. Robert didn't show up again, but he sent messages. First to my phone, asking about Oscar. I didn't answer. Then he started sending letters to the coffee shop, long letters where he spoke of his regret, of how he had changed, of how much he wanted to get to know his son. Oscar read them, but never replied. He kept them in a box in his room in the storage area. When I asked him why he kept them if he wasn't going to reply, he told me something that broke my heart. Because maybe someday I want to remember that he at least tried, that even though he was late, he at least tried. 3 months after the revelation, something changed. Oscar arrived one morning with a strange expression on his face. "Grandma," he said, "I think I need to see him. Robert, my father." I felt a pang in my chest, but I nodded. "Are you sure?" "No, but I think I need to do it anyway. I need to hear him. I need to decide for myself whether he deserves a chance or not." "That's fine." I took his face in my hands. "Son, you don't need my permission for anything. You're old enough to make your own decisions. And whatever your decision is regarding Robert, I will support you, even if you decide to give him a chance. Even then, even if I don't like it, even if it hurts me, if you need to try, then you have my blessing." He hugged me tightly. "Thank you, Grandma. I don't know what I would do without you." "You'll never have to find out, because I'm not going anywhere." That night, Oscar called Robert using the number on the card he had kept all this time. The call lasted less than 5 minutes. I heard Oscar's voice from the storage room, tense but firm. They agreed to meet the next day at a neutral coffee shop, not mine. Oscar wanted neutral territory, a place where he could leave if things went badly. He was smart. My grandson. Cautious. He wasn't going to be manipulated easily. I barely slept that night. I stayed awake in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering what Robert would say, how Oscar would react, if this would end up healing or opening deeper wounds. Part of me wanted to protect Oscar, forbid him from seeing Robert, keep him safe from the man who had abandoned both of us. But I knew I couldn't do that. Oscar needed this. He needed to close this chapter, one way or another. The next morning, Oscar dressed carefully. He wore a new shirt we had bought together the week before, clean pants, shoes that weren't broken. He looked handsome. He looked like the young man he should have always been. "Do you want me to go with you?" I offered while we were having breakfast. He shook his head. "I need to do this alone, Grandma, but thank you for offering. If at any point you feel uncomfortable or want to leave, just do it. You don't owe him anything." "Understood. Understood." I hugged him before he left. "I love you, grandson. No matter what happens today, that doesn't change." "I love you too, Grandma." The hours that followed were torture. I tried to keep busy in the coffee shop, but every few minutes I looked at the clock. Martha noticed my nervousness and sat with me during a break. "He's going to be fine," she told me, taking my hand. "Oscar is strong. You raised him well in these past few months. Whatever the outcome, he'll be okay." I didn't raise him. I just gave him what he deserved from the beginning. Exactly. You gave him love, stability, family. That's more than Robert ever gave him. Nothing Robert says today can take that away from him. She was right, of course, but I still worried. Oscar returned 4 hours later. He walked into the coffee shop with a serious expression, impossible to read. My heart raced. I walked over to him immediately. "How did it go?" I asked, studying his face. He sat down heavily in a chair. "It was complicated." I sat down across from him, waiting. "He cried," Oscar finally said. "My father cried in front of me. He apologized over and over again. He told me about his life, about how he built his business, about his marriage that ended 2 years ago. He has 2 children. Well, he had. Now he has 3, technically. My half-siblings." He paused. He showed me pictures of them. They're little, 7 and 9 years old. I felt a pang in my chest. Robert had had other children. He had been a father to them in ways he never was to Oscar. "How did you feel seeing that?" I asked softly. "Jealous," Oscar admitted. "Those kids had what I never had. A present father, a home, security." He bit his lip. But I also felt sorry for him because his marriage was destroyed. His wife took the kids, and now he barely sees them. And I knew it was because he didn't know how to be a good husband. Probably because he never faced what he did to me, to my mum, to you. Did he admit that? "Yes," he said. He said he had been running from his past his whole life, but that the past always caught up with him, that his wife left him because she said he was emotionally distant, incapable of truly connecting. And he knows why. Because he abandoned his mother and his son, and he never faced what that meant. I was silent, processing this. It was more self-awareness than I expected from Robert. "And what else did he say?" "He offered me money, a lot of money. He said he wanted to compensate me for all the lost years, that he could pay for my college, buy me a car, whatever I wanted." My blood ran cold. "And what did you say?" Oscar looked me directly in the eyes. "I told him I didn't want his money, that if all he could offer me was money, then he hadn't understood anything." I felt pride flood through me. "And how did he react?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he said I was right, that money was the easy thing, that the difficult thing was being present, being vulnerable, building a real relationship. Oscar rubbed his face. He asked me to give him a chance to try, not as a purchase, not as compensation, just as father and son, starting from scratch. "And how do you feel about that?" Oscar took a moment to answer. I could see the struggle in his eyes, the conflict between the boy who always wanted a father and the young man who had learned to survive without one. "I don't know, Grandma. Part of me wants to give him that chance, wants to believe that people can change. But another part is so afraid he'll disappoint me again, that this will be temporary, that as soon as things get tough, he'll disappear like he did before." "That fear is completely valid," I said, taking his hand. "And no one can tell you what decision to make. But I'll tell you this. If you decide to give him a chance, do it with your eyes open. Give him a chance, yes, but don't give him all your heart right away. Let him earn it. Let him prove with actions, not with words, that he has changed. And if he doesn't change, what if he hurts me again? Then you will have learned that you tried, that you were the bigger person, and you'll have peace knowing that you did your part. And I'll be here to help you heal, as always." Oscar nodded slowly. I told him we could try, but with conditions. No money, no grand gifts, just time, occasional dinners, conversations, really getting to know each other. That sounds fair. I also told him that you were important to me, that if he wanted to be a part of my life, he had to fix things with you too, that he couldn't have a relationship with me while ignoring his own mother. Tears burned my eyes. You really told him that? Yes. I told him that you had been more family to me in 3 months than he had been in my whole life, and that if he couldn't respect that, then we had nothing to talk about. I hugged him tightly, not caring that the coffee shop customers saw us. Thank you, grandson, but you don't have to fight my battles. My relationship with Robert is my responsibility. But Grandma, you taught me that family defends each other, and you are my family, the only one that truly matters. The months went on. Robert began to show up occasionally. At first it was tense, awkward. He would come to the coffee shop and order coffee. He would sit with Oscar at a corner table and talk. I watched them from a distance, alert to any sign that Oscar was uncomfortable or unhappy. But slowly something began to change. The conversations became less forced. I saw Oscar laugh once at something Robert said. I saw Robert listen with genuine attention when Oscar told him about his day. With me, Robert was careful, respectful. He didn't demand anything. He just asked permission to be there, to see his son. I was cold but polite. I wasn't ready to forgive him, and he seemed to understand that. One afternoon, after one of their visits, Robert approached me as I was cleaning the counter. "Mom," he said softly, "can we talk? I'm busy. Please, just 5 minutes." I sighed and put down the rag. 5 minutes. We sat at the same table where years ago he had asked me to sell the coffee shop. The irony was not lost on me. "I want to thank you," Robert began, "for taking care of Oscar, for giving him what I never did, for being the family he deserved. I didn't do it for you. I know, you did it for him, because you are a good person, better than I ever was." I remained silent. "I also want to apologize," he continued. "I know I already said it, but I need to say it again. What I did to you 15 years ago was unforgivable. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I blamed you for not sacrificing your life for my selfish dreams. And then I disappeared like a coward. Why now, Robert? Why after 15 years of silence do you suddenly care?" He looked down. "Because my life fell apart. My marriage ended. My children hate me because I was never really present. I built a business empire, but I destroyed everything that really mattered. And one night, 6 months ago, I was alone in my big, empty house, and I realized I had no one. No one who truly knew me. No one who cared about me beyond the money I could give them." He looked up, his eyes red. "And I thought of you, of how I treated you, of everything I lost when I abandoned you. And I knew I had to come back, that I had to at least try to fix what I broke. And finding Oscar was just a coincidence, completely. When I saw him there with you, when I understood who he was, it was as if the universe was giving me a second chance that I didn't deserve." "You're right," I said coldly. "You don't deserve it." He nodded, accepting the blow. "I know, but I'm going to try to earn it anyway, every day, for the rest of my life if necessary." A full year passed, a year of slow but constant changes. Oscar turned 20 years old, and we celebrated in the coffee shop with all the regular customers. Martha baked a huge cake. There was laughter, hugs, tears of joy. Robert was there too, on the periphery, watching with a mixture of happiness and sadness. He knew it wasn't his place to be in the center, but Oscar had invited him, and that was something. During that year, I saw my grandson flourish in ways I never imagined. He enrolled in night classes at the community college. He was studying business administration, dreaming of one day expanding the coffee shop or perhaps opening his own business. I supported him in everything, proudly paying for his books and tuition. The relationship between Oscar and Robert grew slowly. They had dinner together once a week. Robert taught him about business, about investments, about practical things a father should teach his son. But there was still a distance there, an invisible barrier that neither of them knew how to fully cross. With me, Robert was still respectful but distant. He came to the coffee shop only to see Oscar. He didn't try to force conversations with me. He didn't repeatedly ask for forgiveness. He was simply there, trying to show with actions that he had changed. I still hadn't forgiven him. I wasn't sure if I ever could. The pain of those 15 years of abandonment didn't disappear simply because he had returned repentant. But then something happened that changed everything. It was a slow, quiet Tuesday afternoon. Oscar was in class. I was alone in the coffee shop, preparing inventory for the next day. The door opened and a woman walked in. She was skeletal thin, with dirty, matted hair, greyish skin, and sunken eyes. She wore ragged clothes and smelled of alcohol and grime. She staggered to the counter and looked at me with glassy eyes. "Do you have food?" she asked in a raspy voice. "Yes," I replied automatically. "What would you like?" She rummaged through her pockets and pulled out some dirty coins. "How much can I get with this?" I counted the coins. $2.50. Enough for a coffee, maybe. "This will get you a sandwich and coffee," I lied, pushing the coins back toward her. "On the house." She looked at me in surprise, then with tears in her eyes. "Thank you. God bless you." While I was making her sandwich, she sat at a table near the window. There was something familiar about her, but I couldn't identify what. When I brought her the food, she pounced on it like a hungry animal. "When was the last time you ate?" I asked softly. "I don't know. 2 days, maybe 3. Everything is confusing lately." She took a long sip of the coffee. I sat down across from her. "Do you have somewhere to stay?" She shook her head. "I lost my room months ago. I've been in shelters, on the street, wherever." "Do you have family? Someone who can help you?" Her face contorted into something like pain. "I had a son, but I lost him. It was my fault. All my fault." Something in my chest tightened. What happened to him? I couldn't take care of him. I couldn't even take care of myself. One day I just left. I left him alone. I thought he would be better off without me. But now, her voice broke, now I don't know if he's alive or dead. I don't know where he is. And it's my fault. All my fault. "What is your son's name?" I asked, although something in me already knew the answer. She looked at me with those sunken red eyes. "Oscar. My baby is called Oscar." The world stopped. I really looked at her for the first time, searching for the young, beautiful woman I had seen years ago hanging on my son's arm. She was there, buried under years of addiction and pain. But she was there. "Isabel," I whispered. She started. "How do you know my name?" I was silent for a long moment, my heart beating so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. This woman, this broken and destroyed woman, in front of me was my grandson's mother. She was the woman who had raised Oscar in poverty. She was the woman who had abandoned him. She was the woman who had been with my son. "I am Vera," I finally said. "Robert's mother." The colour drained from her face. She tried to stand up, but her legs didn't support her. No, no, I have to go. I shouldn't have come here. Sit down, I ordered firmly. Please, sit down. She obeyed, trembling. Oscar is alive, I said, watching her eyes open wide. He's fine. He's here. He works here, with me. Isabel began to sob, a heartbreaking cry that came from the depths of her being. Really? My baby is okay? Yes, he's more than okay. He's studying in college. He's healthy. He's safe. Thank God. Thank God. She covered her face with her hands. I thought I had killed him. I thought he had died on the street because of me. It almost happened, I said honestly. He was living on the street for months after you left. But he came here, and I took him in. She looked at me with something like astonishment. Why? Why would you help him, after everything that happened between your son and me? Because he's my grandson. Because he's family. And because he deserved to have what you both denied him, a home. Isabel flinched at my words. You're right. I was a terrible mother, the worst human being. My baby deserved much better than me. Yes, he deserved it. But he's here now, and the question is, what are you going to do now? What do you mean? Are you going to continue destroying yourself, or are you going to fight for your life? For your son? She shook her head violently. I don't deserve to see him. Not after what I did. It's better if he thinks I'm dead. That's not your decision, I said firmly. It's his. Oscar deserves to know you're alive. He deserves to decide if he wants to see you or not. He'll hate me. He should hate me. Maybe, or maybe not. But he deserves the opportunity to decide. Isabel cried silently for a long time. I waited, giving her time to process. I'm sick, she finally admitted. My liver is failing. The doctors at the free clinic told me that if I don't stop drinking, I don't have much time left. And have you stopped drinking? I'm trying. Every day I try. But it's so hard. Alcohol is the only thing that makes the pain go away. What pain? The pain of losing everything. Of losing Robert. Of losing my son. Of knowing that I ruined the only good things in my life. I sighed deeply. This woman was a victim too, in her own way. A victim of her own decisions. Yes, but a victim nonetheless. Oscar will arrive in 2 hours, I said. You can wait for him if you want. Or you can leave now and never come back. You decide. Isabel visibly trembled. I don't know if I can face him. You have 2 hours to decide. She stayed. The 2 longest hours of my life. Isabel sat in silence, drinking coffee after coffee, occasionally trembling. I continued working, serving the few customers who came in, but my mind was on what was to come. How would Oscar react? Would this destroy him? Or would it bring some kind of closure? When Oscar finally walked in, carrying his college books, smiling, telling me about his exam, he didn't immediately notice the woman in the corner, but then she stood up, and he saw her. Time froze. Oscar dropped his books. His face went through a dozen emotions: shock, disbelief, pain, rage. Mom, he whispered. Isabel took a trembling step toward him. My baby, my beautiful baby. No, Oscar said, backing away. No, you're not my mum. My mum abandoned me. My mum is dead to me. I'm sorry, my love, Isabel sobbed. I'm so sorry, Oscar. I'm sorry I left you. I'm sorry for everything. Where were you? He shouted, tears streaming down his face. Where were you when I was sleeping on the street, when I was hungry, when I was scared. I was lost. I was sick. I was trying to survive. I was trying to survive too, but I was a child. I needed you. Isabel fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. I know, I was terrible. I was the worst mother in the world. And if you could forgive me, if you could give me a chance to forgive you, Oscar laughed bitterly. How can I forgive you? You left me to die. If it hadn't been for my grandmother, I'd be dead now. Dead because of you. I walked over to Oscar and put my hand on his shoulder. Breathe, son. Breathe. He turned to me, his eyes wild with pain. Why is she here? Why did you let her in? Because she came looking for food. And when I realized who she was, I thought you deserved to know she's alive. You deserved to have the choice of seeing her or not. But if you want her to leave, she will leave right now. Oscar looked at his mother, still on her knees on the coffee shop floor, destroyed and broken. Go, he finally said, his voice cold. I don't want to see you. I don't want to know anything about you. Isabel nodded, getting up with difficulty. I understand. I deserve it. But before I go, I need you to know something. She looked him directly in the eyes. I loved you. I always loved you. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't the mother you deserved. She walked out of the coffee shop, and Oscar collapsed into my arms, crying like he hadn't since the night he discovered the truth about Robert. The following days were difficult for Oscar. He barely spoke. He worked mechanically, without the joy he normally had. At night I heard him crying in his room in the storage area. My heart broke for him, but I knew he needed to process this in his own way. A week after the encounter with Isabel, Robert came for his weekly dinner with Oscar. But when he arrived and saw the state his son was in, his expression immediately changed. What happened? He asked, looking at me. I told him about Isabel, about her appearance, about the encounter. Robert visibly turned pale and sat down heavily in a chair. My God, he murmured. Isabel. Did you know she was like that? I asked accusingly. No. The last I heard of her was 19 years ago, when I gave her that money and left. He ran his hands over his face. Where is she now? I don't know. She left and hasn't come back. Robert looked at Oscar, who was sitting silently staring out the window. Son, he said softly, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to go through this. It's not your fault, Oscar replied without looking at him. Well, technically it is. All of this started with me. But this specific thing, seeing her like that was my decision. Do you want to talk about it? I don't know what to say. I spent my whole life hating her for abandoning me. And now that I saw her, destroyed and sick, I only feel emptiness. Not even hate, just emptiness. Robert sat next to his son. When I abandoned your grandmother, I spent years justifying myself, telling myself I had done the right thing, that she was the selfish one. But the truth is, I was running away, running from my responsibility, from my guilt, from everything. He paused. Isabel probably did the same thing. She ran because she couldn't face what she had done to you. That doesn't justify her, but maybe it makes her human. I don't want to feel sorry for her, Oscar said with a broken voice. I want to keep hating her. It's easier. I know. Believe me, I know. 2 more weeks passed. Life continued in the coffee shop. Oscar slowly began to recover, to smile again, although the sadness was still there, beneath the surface. And then Isabel returned. This time it was different. She arrived early in the morning, before we opened. She knocked softly on the door, and I let her in. She looked slightly better, Her clothes were cleaner, her hair was combed, her eyes were clearer. "Vera," she said nervously, "I know Oscar doesn't want to see me, but I need to ask you a favor." "What favor?" She pulled a crumpled envelope from her bag. "They're letters. Letters I wrote for Oscar over the years, but never had the courage to send. There are photos, too, from when he was a baby, from when he was little, before everything fell apart." Her hands trembled, holding the envelope. "I know I don't deserve anything from him, but I want him to have this. I want him to know that there were good times, that I loved him, even when I didn't know how to show it." I took the envelope. "Are you seeking treatment for your illness?" She nodded. "I found a rehab center that accepts people without resources. I start next week. I don't know if I'll survive. The doctors aren't optimistic. But I want to try. I want to die knowing that at least I tried." "Should I tell Oscar this?" "No, please. I don't want him to feel like he has to come see me out of pity. If I survive, if I manage to get sober, maybe then I can try to talk to him again. But not now. Now just give him that. Please." I hesitated, but finally nodded. "I will. Thank you." Isabel turned to leave. Then she stopped. "Take care of him. I know you will anyway. But please, take care of him. He's the best thing I ever did in my life, even though I couldn't take care of him myself." "I will. I promise." That night, after closing the coffee shop, I gave the envelope to Oscar. He looked at it as if it were a bomb. "What is this?" "Your mother came this morning. She left this for you. Letters and photos. She said you don't have to open it if you don't want to." Oscar held the envelope for a long moment. Then he put it on the table. "I can't. Not now." "That's okay. It will be here when you're ready." 3 months passed. The envelope remained unopened on Oscar's table. He would look at it sometimes, but he never touched it. During that time, something changed in the relationship between Oscar and Robert. They became closer. The weekly dinners became 2 a week. Robert started teaching Oscar to drive. He took him to baseball games. They did things a father and son should have done years ago. And slowly, very slowly, I began to soften toward Robert too. I saw the genuine effort he was making. I saw how he loved Oscar in ways he had never loved me. And although it hurt, it also healed something inside me. One night, Robert stayed after Oscar went to his room. He helped me clean the coffee shop in silence. When we finished, he sat down and looked at me. "Mum, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but do you think you can ever forgive me?" I looked at him for a long time. This 36-year-old man who was still my son, despite everything. "I don't know, Robert," I said honestly. "Forgiveness is not something I can force, but I see that you are trying, and that counts for something. Can I at least try to recover some of what we lost as mother and son?" I felt tears in my eyes. "We can try, but it will be slow, and you'll have to be patient." "I have the rest of my life to be patient." That night, something loosened in my chest. It wasn't complete forgiveness. Maybe it never would be, but it was a start. One day, 4 months after Isabel left the envelope, Oscar finally opened it. I was with him when he did. He pulled out the letters with trembling hands and began to read. There were dozens. Letters written over 19 years. Some from when he was a baby, others when he was a child, the last ones from just months ago. Each one was an apology, a memory, an expression of broken love. The photos showed a chubby, happy baby, a smiling child, moments of happiness before everything fell apart. Oscar cried reading them. I did too. She loved me, he whispered. In her broken and damaged way, she loved me. Yes, son, I think so. Do you think I should look for her? Try to talk to her? That depends on you. What does your heart say? He was silent for a long time. My heart says I'm tired of hating, tired of carrying this pain. It says that maybe, just maybe, I could try to understand her. Not necessarily forgive her, but understand her. Then I think you know what to do. Oscar nodded slowly. I'm going to look for her. I'm going to try to talk to her. One last time. Finding Isabel was not difficult. The rehab center she had mentioned had a record of her. She was still there, fighting her demons day by day. The coordinators told me she was progressing, but her health was delicate. The liver damage was severe. They didn't know how much time she had left. Oscar decided to go alone the first time. I offered to go with him, but he needed to do this on his own. I watched him leave that morning with the envelope of letters under his arm, nervous but determined. He returned 3 hours later with red eyes, but at peace. How was it? I asked, hugging him. Difficult, painful, but necessary. He sat down and took a deep breath. She's very sick, Grandma. The doctors give her maybe 6 months if she's lucky. She's sober for the first time in years, but her body is destroyed. What did you talk about? Everything. The past. Her mistakes. Mine too. I told her how much it hurt me that she abandoned me. She cried and apologized 1,000 times, but she also told me things I never knew, like how my father left her feeling worthless, how depression and alcohol took hold of her, how every day she fought the urge to just disappear. And how did you feel listening to that? Sad, still angry, but also understanding. It doesn't justify what she did, but it helps me understand that she was suffering too, that she didn't abandon me because she didn't love me, but because she didn't know how to love herself. The following months, Oscar visited Isabel regularly, once a week, sometimes 2. I never went with him. That was their journey, not mine. But I saw how it changed him, how he became lighter, more at peace. Robert eventually found out too. He wanted to go see her, but Oscar asked him to wait, that Isabel needed to focus on herself first, without the burden of facing the man who had also hurt her. The business prospered. Oscar had become an invaluable partner. With his modern ideas and my experience, the coffee shop had never run better. We started talking about expanding, maybe opening a second location. When that happens, I told him one afternoon, it will be yours. The coffee shop will be completely yours. Grandma, you don't have to. I want to. You are my family, my legacy, and I can't think of better hands to leave this in than yours. He hugged me tightly. I love you, Grandma. Thank you for saving me. We saved each other, son. 5 months after Oscar started visiting Isabel, we got the call. She was in the hospital. She didn't have much time left. Oscar went immediately. This time, I asked his permission to accompany him. I wanted to say goodbye to the woman who, despite everything, had given me my grandson. Isabel was tiny in that hospital bed, connected to machines that kept her alive. But when she saw Oscar walk in, her eyes lit up with pure love. My baby, she whispered. My beautiful baby. I'm here, Mom, Oscar said, taking her hand. I'm here. She saw me behind him and smiled weakly. Vera, thank you. Thank you for taking care of him when I couldn't. I will take care of him always, I promised. Isabel spent her last hours talking with Oscar, remembering the good times, apologizing for the bad ones, telling him how much she loved him and how proud she was of the man he had become. It wasn't because of you, she told him in a weak voice. It was never because you weren't enough. You were perfect. I was the one who wasn't enough. But look at you now. You achieved everything I couldn't. You found family, you found love, you found peace. Thank you, Mum, Oscar cried, for giving me life, for loving me as you could, for fighting in the end. Take care of your grandmother, Isabel whispered. She loves you more than anyone in the world. I will. I promise. Isabel died that night, with her son holding her hand. It was not a violent or painful death. It was peaceful, as if she could finally rest. The funeral was small, just the three of us, Oscar, Robert, and me. Robert cried in front of the grave, finally facing the weight of what his actions had caused. Oscar hugged him, and I watched them cry together, father and son, healing wounds that had been open for too long. 2 more years passed. Oscar graduated from college with honors. We opened 2 new coffee shops. He managed everything with a skill that filled me with pride. Robert became a regular part of our lives. Not as the center, but as another member of our small, rebuilt family. One afternoon, while we were having coffee in the original coffee shop, the one George had built with his hands, Oscar asked me a question. Grandma, do you ever regret not selling this place when Robert asked you to? Not giving him the money? I thought about it carefully. No, I finally said. Because if I had, you wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have this second chance to be a grandmother. We wouldn't have this family we built together. Sometimes the most difficult decisions are the right ones, even if we don't see it at the moment. And have you forgiven him? Robert. I looked at my son, who was on the other side of the coffee shop helping a customer. I'm in process. Forgiveness is not a moment, it's a journey, and we are walking it together, slowly. Oscar smiled. You know, I spent years wondering what my life would have been like if my father had stayed, if my mum hadn't been an alcoholic, if I had grown up in a normal family. He took my hand. But now I know that everything had to happen exactly as it did, because it brought me to you, and you are the best family I could have asked for. Tears rolled down my cheeks. You are my family too, Oscar, my unexpected gift, my second chance. That night, after closing, I sat alone in the empty coffee shop. I looked at the tables where so many stories had happened, where George and I had dreamed, where Robert had broken my heart, where Oscar had walked in looking for a job and given me back my life. I thought of all the pain, of all the suffering, of all the lost years. But I also thought of redemption, of the love I had found in the most unexpected places, of the family I had rebuilt from the ashes. Life hadn't given me what I expected. It had given me something different, something harder, but also something more beautiful. I am 79 years old now. My hair is completely white. My hands tremble more than before. I don't work in the coffee shop as much anymore, but I come every morning to have coffee with Oscar and see the 3 locations prosper under his leadership. Robert comes for breakfast on Sundays. Our relationship will never be what it was when he was a child, but it is something new, something more honest, something built on imperfect forgiveness and complicated love. Oscar got married last year to a wonderful woman named Audrey. They gave me 2 great-grandchildren who fill the coffee shop with laughter every afternoon. I am at peace. Finally, after years of pain and loss, I am at peace. Sometimes people ask me if I would have done things differently, if I would have given the money to Robert, if I would have looked for Oscar sooner, if I would have forgiven faster. And my answer is always the same. I don't know. But I know that every decision, every pain, every moment of suffering brought me here, to this life full of imperfect but real love. And that is enough, more than enough. So I ask you, who has heard my story, would you have given a second chance? Would you have forgiven, or would you have done the same as me? Family is not always the one you are born with. Sometimes it is the one you build along the way.